Welcome back to another episode of Gatehouse Insights. This episode is a mission to uncover the realities of life at the bar, by financial aspects that need to be considered, marketing strategies, and how to manage your workflow. And who else to better shed a light on these topics other than Evelyn Tadros? If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel to catch it all. I wanted to begin with what made you transition to the bar.
Yes, so it was kind of difficult in the sense that I have a lot of interests, and I have thought about a lot of different careers, I suppose, in the despite still having a career in the law. And so transitioning to the bar was really about trying to manage a lot of my interests and outside interests for work, so that I could have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more autonomy as to what I do. So, for example, being at the bar still allows me to be heavily involved in the Human Rights Arts and Film Festival, still allows me to do lots of dancing, allows me to be involved in other projects that I want to be involved in.
At what point in your career did you decide you're going to transition over?
So I had been at Clayton Utes for about 4 years, and I had then become an associate to Justice Armand at the Supreme Court. And it was really during that time where I thought, okay, I think this would be a good opportunity if I want to go to the bar to make that transition now. But it certainly wasn't fixed. I was quite open during that year to think about what other things I might want to do. And I think being in the court a lot with my judge, seeing other barristers and thinking, oh, I think I could do that, really inspired me to think, okay, I'll make the transition now.
From your experience, having been at the bar for a number of years now, when should, I suppose, lawyers transition to the bar?
I think it's really a decision that each individual has to think about for themselves, and I don't think there's a right way to do it or a wrong way to do it. For me, it really suited me to have some experience at a law firm first in litigation, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into at the bar, and also kind of having some contacts and some networks that I could kind of speak to in terms of getting work when I started out. So having that experience worked for me. So as I said, I was about 4 to 5 years in post graduation when I entered the bar. But I certainly do know of people who have entered the bar straight from graduating and they've succeeded in what they've done. So as I said, I don't think there's a right or wrong way in doing things.
Now, you're also a judge's associate, as you mentioned before. How did that help you with making that transition, if at all?
I think there were a few things that it really helped me. One was seeing the law from the judge's point of view, and I think that was really quite important for me to see how it all worked behind the scenes, because when you're a law student or when you're studying or when you're working in the law, it can be very easy to think of judges as these kind of faceless people who just write judgments and not really think about the actual process of doing it. So being on that side really helped me understand what judges like, what they don't like, obviously from my judge's point of view, but typically speaking, and really trying to understand what makes a good submission, what makes it persuasive, and what can annoy a judge, and what can be unpersuasive. So from that point of view, I think it really helped me in the bar, and also it helped me just having a mentor as a judge has been really wonderful in terms of my career transition and starting out at the bar and having somebody who I can speak to when I need to.
Would you recommend others do that as well?
It certainly was a very positive experience for me, and so I would recommend it based on my own personal experience. And I think the other thing that I really liked about the bar was, about being an associate, was it really kind of gave me faith about the justice system. The Supreme Court where we worked was a very wonderful, kind of very welcoming, open place, and it really gave me faith that the judges were really doing the best that they could. And I think it dawned on me on how lucky we are to be living in a country where we have a judicial system that is functioning as well as I saw it function while I was there.
Yeah. Now, being a barrister, you are in effect, I suppose, running your own business. Could you share some of your tips on obviously marketing, selling yourself, and what you've done to build your brand?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's I suppose the things that have worked for me is speaking to people and having good relationships. I'm a pretty social person anyway. I love to kind of have coffees with people. I love to speak to people and hang out with people. So for me, having relationships with the people that I used to work with at Clayton Utes, as well as my friends from law school and the people that I've met through the Human Rights Arts and Film Festival, has been effective in terms of making sure that I have those relationships and that I am able to obtain briefs in the areas that I'm interested in and that I work and practice in. In terms of, I suppose, other types of marketing, I don't think I do anything specific. There are other barristers who have blogs, for example, who are on Twitter and very active on Twitter. I've chosen not to do those things mainly because of time. I have Facebook and I think that's enough for me. I don't think I could handle too much more social media. So there are those aspects which I'm not as involved in. So yeah, I think the main thing for me has really just been networking, having good contacts at the bar as well with other barristers. But I think also thinking always about the areas of law that I want to be involved in, and if there's a particular area, trying to speak to a barrister who's experienced in that area to get their advice on how I could work more in that area, and often that does lead to me getting some work in that area too.
What are some financial considerations, I suppose, lawyers wanting and needing to know before they transition over?
So before I came to the bar, the advice that was given to me is try to have some savings in place so that the first few years, or first year at least, is not so stressful because the cash flow is very up and down. Mm-hmm. And also, the first couple months you're in the reader's course, you can't really earn any money, so you need to have some kind of financial backup. So I think for anyone thinking about the transition to the bar, I'd recommend having a look at how much money you might need in order to comfortably live and do the things that you want to for at least 6 months, if not a year, and try to have some savings in place so that you're not so stressed out in the first few months. I mean, you want to be able to, take on work or not be so stressed about the fact that you might not have so much work at the beginning because you're still starting your practice.
Yeah. Now, speaking, I suppose, in your earlier career at the bar, what control did you have over the types of work or briefs you got in? Did you take everything on, or were you specific from the beginning?
I can't recall saying no to too many things unless I really didn't have time to do it. But I was very open and accepting of any brief that came my way, really. I know that, obviously you do try to create your profile, and on your profile you describe the areas of law that you're wanting to work in. But I was pretty open about taking whatever came my way. In terms of how much control I had, I suppose only in the sense of, trying work that I was really wanting to get involved in. So work that involved the Charter of Human Rights, for example. I was very keen to get work in that area, so I did actively try to seek it. And others, just sometimes it was very random how they came about.
Yeah. Would you recommend others to specialise at the beginning, or can they specialise as they've built up their brand?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit each to their own. I think there's certainly a bit more of a push at the moment for people to be specialised in a particular area. It definitely helps to be specialised so that you can attract, I suppose, a constant and steady stream of work in a particular area. But sometimes people might not know at the beginning what they want to specialise in, and sometimes it just happens. You get a brief in one particular area, and all of a sudden you're a specialist in that area. So, you know, a good example was I hadn't done defamation law before I started at the bar, and I just happened to get a brief because I'd put it on my profile that I was interested in that area. I happened to get a brief very early on, and since then because I've done that, I did that matter, and it involves social media, and obviously a lot of defamation these days involves social media. I have since then gotten a lot of briefs from that area.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to also talk about how you manage your workflow at the bar, because you said it can be quite inconsistent and up and down. How do you manage it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I think, I mean, especially when you are juggling a lot of things, it can be really difficult because life at the bar is by its very nature unpredictable. So I suppose you can only manage it in the sense of trying to really have a handle on the matters that you've got, how much time you think each will take, and trying to somehow predict in the future, you know, whether you can take on more matters now or not, and just trying to make that decision as you go along. But it's every day you're trying to manage it, I suppose.
Yeah. Moving on to an organisation you co-founded just over 13 years ago, which is the Human Rights Arts and Films Festival. What inspired you to start that?
Yeah, so I had just recently come back from Denmark. I was on exchange studying human rights law there. And what really struck me when I came back from Denmark to Australia was, I suppose, the difference in the level of education about human rights in Denmark compared to in Australia. In Denmark, there's quite a lot of education, particularly at secondary school, about the World War, about how the Universal Declaration of Human Rights began. And in that sense, there's a little bit more of a, I suppose, cultural acceptance, at least from what I observed. Other people may have a differing view now, especially. But in Australia, I didn't learn about human rights at school. And I learnt only about it in a kind of a thick textbook in a very specialised law subject, human rights law. And for me, that was problematic, because I think that human rights are very important for everyone. I think it's really important that mainstream society has a really good understanding about human rights, and that it's not just siloed to people who study the law or who understand the law. It's something that I feel that everyone should understand, so that we can live in a peaceful society. And so basically I was procrastinating and trying not to study for my corporation's law exam, and I was Googling human rights and festivals, and happened to stumble on the fact that there were human rights festivals pretty much everywhere in the world except for in Australia. And so that's what really, I suppose, sparked my imagination to think, well, maybe we should start a human rights festival here in Australia, because then we could use film, we could use the arts to talk to people about human rights and about the fact that we are all human, despite all of our differences. You know, we share this common humanity, and I think that's a really important message, particularly now when society can be so divided about so many different things. It's really important to know that we are all human, that we all deserve equal rights.
Yeah. Now you're in the process of putting together the program for 2019, the films for 2019. What do you look for? What type of films can we expect?
So I'm chairperson at the moment. I was at the very beginning involved in selecting the films, but I don't do that as now. There's a fabulous team involved in selecting the films. But what they're really looking for is trying to find films that inspire, that challenge, that enlighten people, but really that kind of have stories that are engaging and relatable, so that, you know, when you're in the audience and you're looking on the screen, you don't think that you're learning about human rights from a law textbook, but it's about stories, and it's about you know, people's experiences, and in that way people can relate to the people that are on the screen. So I think it's not about preaching. I think films that tend to labour their point aren't very effective films. and the festival is not about trying to tell people what to think. It's really about trying to get a diversity of stories out for people to see and to make their own decisions about various issues. So I've just had a sneak peek of the program earlier this week, and it looks fantastic. I'm really, really excited for the selection of films that we're going to be screening.
How many are there, and what topics do they cover?
So I can't remember from the top of my head how many, but I think it's around the 30 to 40 mark. We've got short films and feature films. And in terms of broad themes, there's a theme kind of borderline, which is about global conflicts and people movement. So obviously a huge issue in Australia is the fact that people are seeking asylum, and Australia's treatment of those people who are seeking asylum. So there are Australian films based on that, as well as international films that look at other countries' policies on that issue. We also look at gender equality, so we have a great lineup of films that really put empowering women's stories up front from various different cultures and various different places. We are also looking at the impact between climate change and human rights. It's a fact that the people who are going to be most affected by climate change tend to be those that are most vulnerable, so having a look at the possible human rights impact of all those environmental changes. And I'm going to forget all the different other themes, but there are a few other themes that I can't quite think of.
No, that's fine. And how do people, I suppose, watch them? Where do they go?
So our films screen at ACME for about 2 weeks in May. So as soon as the program is launched, which is going to be in about April, please make sure you jump onto the website www.hraff.org.au to check it all out.
That'll be good. Now, if for lawyers or others wanting to join and volunteer with the festival, what type of roles can they volunteer for, and how do they get involved?
Yeah, so we have actually just recruited a whole bunch of new board members, so that is obviously one way that people can be involved. But we've also got volunteers who help out during the festival, and I think they're looking for volunteers at the moment, so if you're interested in that, you can get in touch with the festival about those opportunities. There's also opportunities throughout the year, so there are certain positions that we need people who have skills and experiences in, for example, marketing, websites and those kinds of things, so, and programming obviously. So if people are interested in those positions, again, get in contact with the festival.
Yeah, that's good. Now you also have a passion for dance.
Yes.
And you're actively still dancing?
Yes. Yeah.
What impact has that had on your professional life?
I think it's kept me sane. From my perspective, it's really important to have a life outside of the law. And for me, dancing and all the socialising that I get to do around with my dance friends is really important to me to make me a whole person. So I dance about twice a week, sometimes more, and we have a kind of regular performance group, and we perform every now and again. And yeah, I really love it, and it kind of keeps me going and gives me that time out that I need, I think, every week to not be thinking about work, not be thinking about other stresses in my life, and just to be dancing.
Yeah. Evelyn, thank you very much for joining me today.
No worries.
And that's it. Another episode of Gatehouse Insights draws to an end. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing this video with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel, where you can see more.